Welcome to Boxing During Dinner. Armando Alvarez with Victor Bermudez. And you guys recognize the other person here with us. It's Jessi Losada, longtime Spanish broadcaster who now is with Fox Deportes. Jessi calls a lot of the fights. He'll be part of the broadcast team of some big fights coming up, including Deontay Wilder against Tyson Fury 3 and Errol Spence against Manny Pacquiao. Jessi, welcome once again to Boxing During Dinner. Sorry that this isn't Randazzo's and we're not having dinner right now, but we'll owe you one.
It's the fault of the pandemic. I wanted the invitation to go to Randazzo's, but anyway, it's great to see you guys, and it's great to talk a little bit of boxing.
No, but Zoom and this whole new the new normal, right? It creates opportunities because you're in the Los Angeles area and we're in Miami, and we could still have a show.
That's right. Doesn't matter where we are.
Well, Victor today spoke to someone that you're very familiar with, who's actually going to be fighting this weekend, believe it or not. Victor, who did you speak to?
I had the opportunity to speak with the Mexican legend, the boxing legend that is Julio Cesar Chavez. Obviously, he has an exhibition this weekend against Hector Macho Camacho Jr., the Puerto Rican legend's son. And it's supposed to be an exhibition, and it's supposed to be for a great cause. But things have seemed to have gone sour. Hector Macho Camacho Jr., I guess, in defending the honor of his father and his career, has taken this to some personal levels and has upset the Mexican legend to an extent that he believes this is no longer an exhibition and is treating this as if it was one of those wars he's been involved, because he says it's become way too personal for his liking.
Yeah, let's listen to what Julio Cesar Chavez had to say in español.
¿Por qué me falta el respeto? Perdón, este muchacho, ¿me entiendes? O sea, me faltó el respeto, me empujó y la verdad esto se salió un poco de control, ya lo tomó personal y entonces pues yo también, la verdad, ¿me entiendes? He entrenado como si fuera para una pelea formal, ¿me entiendes? Porque yo sé que arriba del ring, aunque sea con careta, ¿me entiendes? Los golpes son más peligrosos con careta que sin careta, ¿me entiendes?
Jessi, Chavez Sr., at this point of his life, an exhibition, he did a few against Jorge Arce, saying that this is turning personal. This has to be all part of the act, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. He knows the old Macho Camacho guy, and then the sun doesn't, the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree, right? So this is the Camacho style of selling these things, and Julio knows how to play it up. But anyway, what really makes me think is what's going on with all these veterans. They got to invent some sort of a veteran division in boxing for all these guys that are going back. Eric Morales, Marco Antonio Barrera. Marco Antonio Barrera looks better now than he did when he was fighting.
He looked amazing.
I mean, so anyway, I think it's a good thing for boxing, seeing all these legends coming back, and getting back into the ring. But yeah, they got to play it up because, if it's just an exhibition, I mean, it winds up being something like Mayweather against that internet guy,
No, and what was cool about the Chavez exhibitions against Travieso Arce, Travieso Arce is a funny guy. Chavez likes to have fun as well. So they made it fun. They were like hugging each other and they were like smack the referee's butt. That's what an exhibition should be, not what we've seen in some of these other fights. It was nice to see Mike Tyson back in the ring. Evander Holyfield says he's going to fight again. De La Hoya, they just announced he's going to fight Vitor Belfort, the former UFC champion. So yeah, absolutely. They should create one of these legends leagues and when they could all fight each other, and let's see who comes out on top.
Yeah, let's see who comes up. I mean, and De La Hoya wanted to fight against Canelo too, which I think is completely ridiculous. But anyway,
not unless he wants to die.
Yeah, he hasn't been that well on his comments lately.
Listen, if you would have been talking about a Canelo and De La Hoya in his prime when he was at 147, of course. Yeah. I mean, massive fight. I was just watching part of and I shared it in a chat with Victor earlier, the 12th round of Mosley De La Hoya, which was amazing. What an amazing round. But De La Hoya at this stage trying to fight Canelo, not likely. I mean, if you're 47, right, the guy you should be fighting is Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. And that's what Anderson Silva is going to be doing this weekend, Victor.
Yeah, look, that's the one I'm most intrigued by. I had the opportunity to ask Senior about the fact that he's on a card with all his, with his two sons, and he says it's something that he just, the moment this was presented to him, it was a great way to involve the rest of the family. But that's the fight I'm looking forward to seeing, because we haven't seen the MMA fighter have much success against the boxer. And something leads me to believe that this will be the first time we get to see the MMA fighter really take advantage of a boxer. I just don't know where Junior's head is at. We haven't known for quite some time. If we want to, say De La Hoya's been saying some outlandish things, Junior on the other side not just says it, but puts out the videos to go along with it. So I'm intrigued. This is the fight that it's, as the boxing fan and someone who covers it for a living, I might regret saying this, but that fight might be the one I'm most intrigued by this weekend, and that's crazy to say, but I'm really intrigued by Junior trying to get back in. Look, what we saw against Daniel Jacobs the last time, we saw him get beat up in Mexico by a journeyman, and now taking on Anderson Silva, and a washed-up Anderson Silva, who in his prime was Roy Jones status in MMA. And they always talked about that matchup coming to fruition. It never did. I want to see what Anderson Silva still has in the tank. And then, there's still an audience for Junior. I personally don't like to see it, even though I just said this is the most intriguing fight of the weekend. I think he needs to get right before taking on some real boxers. But if he can do something that, to capture the attendance, the audience and the attention of some, and, making Silva look silly, it might be an opening to a bigger fight in a sport where he's supposed to have been bigger than what he ended up being.
Man,
no, you're absolutely right. I think he still has a draw, a fan base that could
It's
definitely
crazy, Jesse. Yeah, it's nuts.
It could help project him. It could help project him. So we'll see. I mean, Anderson is what, like 36, 46 or something like that, 47. I don't know. He's pretty out there. So I have a feeling that this is more of a fight to just make Chavez Jr. look good. He's 35, like you said. I mean, it's hard to tell where he's at right now, but. It always has been that way with him. So you never know. But, he could have been a talented boxer. He really could have. He
was so close from becoming middleweight champion. He almost knocked out Sergio Martinez.
That's right. And he could have knocked him out earlier in that fight had he really pressed on and listened to the things that he was supposed to listen to. So I don't know. Maybe he learns with age. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes it takes people a long time to really be able to figure themselves out. And hopefully he has. I mean, he's got a family now, and it wouldn't be a bad moment for him to add a few bucks to his family too.
Yeah, no, and on a personal level, it'll be nice if he gets his act together. But this weekend, tons and tons of fights. One card fell through, which we'll talk about in a bit. But Jesse, we have Jermell Charlo, one of the Charlo twins. Jermall is the middleweight champion. Jermell, the junior middleweight champion. He's going to be fighting Montiel, defending his title. Nobody thinks that. Actually, no, wait. This is Jermall. This is fighting. I always get confused. Jermell, yeah. Jermell's fighting Castaño, upcoming next. Wow. Talk about getting mixed up with the two brothers. But Jermall fighting Montiel. And he obviously wants the big prize, right? The big prize being Canelo Alvarez, Triple G, even Demetrius Andrade. They've talked about these fights coming to fruition over and over and over again. Instead, he's fighting Montiel, who, and no disrespect to Montiel, shouldn't be a hard night for Jermall Charlo. So what will we see next for Jermall? Because him and his brother talk a big game, and they keep active, which I like. But why is it so hard for them to get the big fight, or for Jermall, for instance, to get the big fight?
Yeah, it's difficult for both of them to get a good opportunity, a good fight. And you know, when that happens, I'm not so sure that they're the ones who are also trying to be very kind of manipulate what it is that they want to do and what they want to project at a certain moment. In other words, I don't think that they are really looking for a really tough fight either. They want to look good, you know. They don't want to have any problems. They want Canelo. Both of them want Canelo, but I mean, everybody wants Canelo at this point in boxing, and what they got to do is not make a mistake, and that's what happens. That's the problem in boxing right now. You know, that you don't have the guys that want to fight whoever. You know, no, they want this guy, so they're going to be careful. They're going to try to craft a good opponent so they can knock him out, look good, and then say, well, I deserve a shot at Canelo and the big bucks, you know. And I think that's kind of what they're doing, because, I mean, at the end of the day, neither one of them has really fought, you know, exceptional. You know, you can say, okay, he's had fights against 10 really good boxers. You know, it's not there. They definitely haven't done that.
Right, and I think Jermal's best performance was against J. Rock Williams, Victor. Jermel's being against Erickson Lubin, who's going to be fighting in a couple of weeks. But they're both very, very talented. I mean, these are guys that in the right moment, especially Jermal, could beat a Triple G, could give a Canelo a good fight because of their hand speed, their boxing skills. They're very talented guys, and if Jermal would go up and fight Demetrius Andrade, I think he beats him. If he goes up and fights Benavidez, I don't know what happens, but it's an intriguing fight too.
Look, I was high on the Charlo twins about 3-4 years ago. I was telling everyone who would listen, this is the future of boxing. They literally call themselves the future of boxing. And I believed it. I bought into all the hype, and somewhere along the line, the last 3 years, they seem to have lost some of that luster that was surrounding them. And I just don't know what it is. It's what Jessi says. They say they're willing to fight everyone, anywhere, but in reality, it's what Canelo says. They just all want a payday. Everybody wants a payday. They all say they want Canelo, but what you want is the payday that comes with Canelo, because when you step into the ring with them, it's totally different. We see guys act like they've never acted before, and they don't give the competitive fight that they promise you leading up to it.
Yeah,
go ahead, Jessi.
I was going to say, interject only on that say, Victor, that the PBC guys really wanted to get these guys fighting a lot more quality, people than they have. So they've been very selective too. Oh no, not that guy. No, so that's not good for boxing.
Yeah, and that's when you start to question, how bad do you really want to do this? How bad do you really want to be a champion? Or it's like Canelo says, you just want the payday. You want what comes with a Canelo fight. And it's what guys wanted with a Mayweather fight. Mayweather was your lottery ticket. And after that, you could retire and then you never heard from these guys again. And it seems like that's what we're dealing with some of these guys. And I don't want to put the Charlo twins into that category just yet, but it's time. We knew you guys were coming, and we expected this from you guys 4 years ago, but it's 4 years too late. When are we going to start seeing the step up in competition? And I don't think this Saturday is a step up in competition. And it's sad for the fans, because if you guys are really the future of boxing, it's time to start acting like it and facing some caliber opponents that's going to make people think, okay, this isn't the future. This is actually boxing. It's the present.
No, and I think the answer is in other weight classes, because if Jermal wins on Saturday, which he should beat Montiel and defend his title, I think the next logical matchup would be against David Benavidez, because at 168, everybody wants Canelo. Triple G right now, it doesn't seem like his head is too much into boxing. He came back in, won a fight, but since then he hasn't been able to secure a fight. So you got all the champions fighting each other, which Canelo's wiping out the division. His next fight is going to be against Sweet Hands Plant. So Sweet Hands against Canelo. After that, a guy that has pretty sweet hands himself is Benavidez. But who does he fight? The logical fight, Jessi, is against Jermall Charlo. Charlo comes up in weight. It's a big fight. They both talk a big game. I know Edgar Berlanga's there as well, but I don't think he's ready for those two. So Charlo Benavidez will be a really nice fight with the winner fighting Canelo.
Yeah, that's the ideal thing. I mean, that would be perfect. But I don't see the Charlo's looking for that fight. I think Benavidez is the kind of fighter that he'll fight anybody. Whoever they put in front of him, he's ready to go. And these guys got to show it. They have all their publicity there with lions and whatnot. I mean, they gotta bring out that lion because I'm just not seeing it so far.
The lion is Benavidez. The lion in that 160, 168 outside of Canelo, obviously. I believe Benavidez is the one. I think he could beat Triple G. I think he'll beat the Charlo. Benavidez is a problem in that division, and might be a problem for Canelo within a year or two.
I think he gives Canelo the toughest fight out of all those guys.
Yeah,
he's a tall guy. He's heavy. He on a normal weight, like on a normal time in his life, he's a 200-pounder. David Benavidez.
Yeah,
he's a fat kid, and he lost all the weight, and he's done excellent in boxing. Him and his brother, but he's a lot better than his brother was. And I think he gives Canelo a hell of a fight. So let's see what happens. But looking forward to seeing Charlo fight this weekend. Looking forward to his brother Jermel against Castaño down the road. And when I mention other divisions, I think Jermel also will be looking for someone moving up in weight, like an Errol Spence. If he beats Pacquiao, to Jesse's point, we spoke earlier about this. If he beats Pacquiao, or even a Terrence Crawford moving up. But
Armando, before you move on, someone that we dismissed, and I just thought of that moved up to middleweight and had success. What about Charlo with Erislandy Lara?
That could happen. And Erislandy Lara, he looked great in his last fight. He's a guy that's changed his style because obviously he's a boxer first.
Because now, Cubans are boring pros. Because Cubans and the pros are boring. Unless you're Casamayor
or Gamboa. Gamboa was exciting.
Yeah, look, I mean, some of them have changed. I mean, Ugas to me is a good boxer.
I love Ugas.
Fair point. Yep.
I love the way he fights. I mean, and nobody can say, oh, he's not an exciting fighter. But
even Lara had to change against Jared Hurd. It was fight of the year type fight, and against Lamana or whoever this guy he just fought, destroyed him in one round. But you're absolutely right, Victor. I mean, they used to be in the same stable, not anymore. Erislandy Lara now trains with Ismael Salas. And I think that's a really good match for him. He's a Cuban trainer who likes aggression. He likes boxing, but he also likes the aggression. So I think it's a breath of fresh air. Other than, hey, you guys are masterful boxers. Let's continue making you into a masterful boxer. I've never understood that. If you're a masterful boxer, you need to be more aggressive. And I like that that's what Erislandy Lara is doing. But there's one person that will never get accused of being a boring fighter. And that's Inoue. What do they call him? The monster, right? He fights a Saturday night as if we didn't have enough fights a Saturday night. He's going to be fighting. I'm really excited it's a fight he should win. But I'm really excited to see what he does in the future. And a lot of people have, after he fought Nonito Donaire, it was a tough fight. He comes back, destroys his next opponent. And some people do argue that Inoue, he has all the tools, but where's the resume? So would you have him, Jessi, in the top 3-4 pound for pound fighters like a lot of people do, just based on his skill alone?
Yes, I'd definitely have him inside the top 5, and I think the majority of the people have him in the top 10 for sure. Most of the fans and media. I think he's the real thing. This guy can hit. This guy can fight, and we all know that Japan has given great boxers in those weights in the past. So I like it. I think he's going to be something special in boxing. He's one of my favorites right now.
And Victor, what do you rank him amongst the top pound for pound fighters? Because a lot of people have him. Some people have him at the very top, like Canelo and then Inoue, or even vice versa.
I have a huge admiration for Jessi Rene Giraldo, who I was just with today. He's one who has Inoue in the top 5. I'm hesitant to put him there just because of that reason. It's I think, me, I'm big on you need to fight in the States. You need to prove yourself and build your resume in the States. He's doing that. and I have him just slightly outside of the top 5. Definitely a top 10. There's no way he's outside of the top 10. But I just think there's 5 more just worthy of being a pound for pound champions. And then again, you know me with my pound for pound list, I like to see you go at least up and down in weight. Come from that era of Roy Jones from middleweight all the way to heavyweight. Floyd Mayweather went up in weight as well. Manny Pacquiao. But look, Chocolatito was one who was in the top 5 and hadn't built a resume here, and then he came to the States and proved himself, and didn't go all the way up in weight where some of the greater pound for pound guys have gone. So it's something that you can be considered pound for pound great when some of the lesser weight classes. But he's a top 10. I just have him slightly outside of the top 5.
Yeah, no, and just you mentioned Chocolatito. I agree. He's an incredible talent, but he's always been difficult. He's been difficult in training, the respecting the weights. I mean, he's got a lot of problems, But Inoue is from what I understand, he's very focused on the gym and being ready to fight and not messing around. In other words, And so I think that's his advantage too. Boxers that are like that nowadays, like Canelo, that they live for boxing. Those are the ones.
To your point, I'll never forget, and one of the most bizarre scenes, and take that how you want, because in boxing there's a ton of bizarre scenes. But I'll never forget watching Chocolatito get off the scales, and the moment he gets off and goes, we've all been at weigh-ins before. You get off, you go down the steps, and you go back behind the curtains. And the man literally sat Indian style. They handed him a bowl of pasta, and he could not wait for the utensils. And I didn't know if to be sad for what I was seeing, to laugh because of what I was seeing. But as time passed, I just felt so bad for this man, because we understand what it takes to cut weight in MMA. We've seen it in boxing ourselves, but it's to what you say, he doesn't treat it as it should be treated. It's not a year-round thing. Like Andre Ward says, you can't balloon up 20, 30 pounds overweight at what you fight in. And Chocolatito seems to struggle with that. I'm telling you, a grown man, well, an older man, sitting Indian style and not having the patience to wait for utensils because how starved you are to eat the pasta with your bare hands. And that was one of the saddest scenes I've ever seen in boxing.
No, that's crazy. And that's what makes guys like Mayweather and Hopkins so special, because these are guys that they were at fighting weight. If you called Bernard Hopkins on a Thursday and told him, hey, this Saturday, would you fight for the world title? He would have probably told you absolutely. He would have been in shape, made weight, and won the fight. Mayweather, the same. That's what separates these guys from a bunch of great fighters, right? But these other great fighters, they balloon up, they get heavy, they lose weight. Mayweather and Hopkins are like pinnacle. And one guy that was notorious for doing that, not being in shape, I'm talking about the opposite, getting fat and then coming back down, was Roberto Duran, who just turned 70. And Mano de Piedra Duran, I remember my dad running into him when I was a kid, and he took a picture with him, and he, of course, back then there's no iPhones, right? We're talking about the mid 80s. So my dad, gets the picture developed, and when he shows it to me, I'm like, who's the fat guy? Like this fat guy with a mustache. And Roberto Duran at 200 pounds, when and after that he fought Iran Barkley and beats him. So some guys have the skill and the fortitude to do that effectively, but most of the time it's a detriment. And seeing someone like Chocolatito do that, that's kind of tough. But Inoue looks like a guy that's disciplined, to Jesse's point.
Sure.
He's a great Japanese champion, and I think before Nonito Donaire retires, I think we're gonna see the rematch of that fight, because it was a very exciting fight, and Nonito Donaire looked like a beast in his last fight, Jesse.
Yeah, he looked really good. I think he got himself together finally mentally, and I think that he's going to make a comeback. I
And
mean, we all know.
his wife trains him. Who knew that
Yeah.
was a who knew that was a trick?
It- well, I don't know. My wife trains me too here at home. She's trained me pretty good.
Yeah, but
But
my training at least is I'm trained to wash plates, to
right.
to help clean the kitchen.
Exactly. But
I'm
no,
not
I
I'm
think
not winning any
we all
titles.
know he's got great tools. I mean, the guy is a good boxer. He hits really hard, and he's got a lot of stamina when he trains, and he's well prepared. So yeah, I think he can make a big comeback, and I'd love to see that rematch.
Absolutely.
And one fight that's not going to happen this weekend is Teofimo Lopez, who's going to defend his unified lightweight title against George Kambosos Jr. And Victor and I spoke to Kambosos earlier this week. And thanks to everybody that watched that interview. We posted it because it was a good interview. We posted it the day, the night after the night of the postponement, right?
Yep.
We wanted to post it because it wasn't fair to Kambosos. You know, he trained his ass off, came from Australia, left his kids over there, flew in his pregnant wife, and Victor and I saw her. I'm not sure how many months she is, but it looked maybe 6, right?
Yeah, she's close.
So it's you know, not an easy thing, and all of a sudden the biggest shot of his career gets canceled. Teofimo Lopez tested positive for COVID-19. There were issues around ticket sales based on pricing here in Miami. Once they announced the cancellation, they announced that the fight is August 14th. I checked. Well, let me be honest. I called Santos Perez from the Miami Herald, a good friend of ours, and the first thing Santos asked about the new date was, are the Marlins at home? And I said, you know what, Santos, I don't know. Let's check. He checked, and they are at home. So that fight's moving out of Miami. I'm not doubting that Teofimo Lopez has COVID-19, because why even play with something like that? Something that so many people have died of. But I do think that it was a blessing in this, a blessing in disguise to the head of Triller and the people organizing this fight, because I think they could provide a bigger event, possibly somewhere else. And I hate to say it, I'm a Miami native. I wanted this fight at Marlins Park, but ticket sales are ticket sales, and it's probably going to be a bigger fight in Vegas or somewhere else.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they do it in Vegas. I mean, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to build him up here. He's definitely a top 10, pound for pounder. And I think the guy's got a really great future. I'll tell you, Eric Morales, who works with us there at Fox, he thinks that guy is the guy, that he's going to really bloom in the next couple of years and become one of the best in the world. Definitely in the top 5. He had him maybe about a year ago or something like that in his top 10 pound for pound, when nobody really knew that much about him other than winning the title
before Lomachenko. Then
right. Mm-hmm.
And Victor, you've been covering. I mean, if there's been a guy that has been all over this fight and has been all over the doings, right, from the fighters and all that, it's Victor. Victor's been very informed, and man, I hate to say this, but
I know what I don't want to,
like, you weren't caught off guard, like you weren't surprised that something came up. Unfortunately,
I'm not going to sit here and say I don't believe the reason for why it's being called off, but I don't think that's the only reason why this fight was called off. I do agree, and you can look it up. Ticket sales were atrocious. They weren't selling tickets. Anyone here locally who would tell me, hey, should I buy tickets? No, hold off. I would hold off until the day of the fight and walk up and get a ticket for $40 ringside. I like Teofimo Lopez. Been covering him since the Olympics in 2016. But there's a reason why he fights at the theater in MSG. There's a reason why he hasn't sold a pay-per-view. There's a reason why his Lomachenko fight was on ESPN and it wasn't pay-per-view. And now you want to put Teofimo Lopez on a pay-per-view? And I like George. I personally like George. I've been watching George spar and going to his training camps for well over 3 years now. George Kambosos is not a pay-per-view fighter. I'm sorry to tell this to the audience. Teofimo Lopez, I'm sorry to tell Teofimo, I would tell him to his face. Who knows what would happen to me then, but Teofimo Lopez isn't a pay-per-view fighter. He's a pound for pound, top 10 pound for pound fighter, absolutely. Maybe even top 5. But pay-per-view fighter, he is not. Miami, Lone Depot Stadium, not AAA, not up in Fort Lauderdale, Bank Atlantic or Bank United, whatever it's called now. We're not talking about 19,000 seat arena.
Or the Hard Rock.
We're talking about, or Hard Rock Live. We're talking about 35,000 Marlins Park, Lone Depot. No. And I don't care how you try to decorate it with Gente de Zona and Meek Mill. No. Know your market, and that's not Miami. Miami rather spend $1,500 at Club Live with 3 bottles than to go watch Teofimo Lopez versus George Kambosos. It's just not the headliner. On top of that,
but look, we've seen in the past. The 3 of us have attended a ton of fights here in Miami, and it's like, oh yeah, the Cuban fighters. I went one time to La Casamayor fight at the AAA. They had a big ass curtain blocking halfway half of the arena because there wasn't enough people in the seats, and it still looked empty. Miami, for some reason, unless you provide a huge event, isn't a big fight town. You need like a Roy Jones, right? When he fought at the AAA, it got pretty packed. When Tito Trinidad, pretty packed. Going back or like the Mikosuke fights, but that's a small venue. You get that atmosphere. But Miami isn't let's go see Teofimo Lopez, who's ranked. They don't know who Teofimo Lopez is. You know, like we know him because we're boxing fans. And I was gonna go to the fight. I wouldn't have missed it. But Victor's right. I mean, combine that plus Miami not being, and I hate to say it because it's my city, and I wish that they would show up for the big events. But there's a reason why the Marlins games are empty.
Mando, but let's be fair to the city. Is it a big event?
Well, that too.
I want to chime in on that too, because I think that if you did that same fight, like Teofimo fighting here in LA, I think you would also have a challenge to get to fill a large arena, because he's well known, but he's not that well known because he really, he only had one incredible fight. I mean, you gotta. He needs to be built up. He needs to be taken to Vegas. They need to put him up against some good boxers, and then he becomes a pay-per-view figure. But he's not now. He's not now. Not in Miami. Not in LA. Not anywhere.
Miami's a superstar.
That's just
town.
my opinion on that.
Yeah, Miami's a superstar town. You need a Pacquiao. You need a Mayweather. You need a Canelo. You need someone like that to fill seats.
The guy's 16-0, guys. He's 16-0.
Mm-hmm.
That is just 4 years ago he was in the Olympics. He's on his way to be a great fighter. He's a really good fighter, a pound for pound fighter, but he's 16-0. The name is just not big enough to carry his own pay-per-view.
But look,
Turner found out the hard way.
You want to fill seats with him, you got to put him in a fight friendly town or arena, like a Madison Square Garden, like a Barclays Center, or somewhere in Vegas. That it's there's people that have that fever to go watch these fights, and I think those places would get filled. But Jesse's right, somewhere like LA, at I don't even know what it's called anymore, but what used to be the StubHub Center, and now it's called like Dignity Park, I think.
Right. Yeah.
You may not fill that. But
and that's not very big. That's pretty
big.
Small. I mean,
and look,
they have an area that they use for boxing, which isn't very large. But I don't think they would do that well. They probably, they would probably try to do a fight like that in some big arena like the Staples Center or something. They wouldn't get enough people. I mean, it wouldn't.
Jesse and Armando, folks watching this don't have to take our word for it. And you might think, oh, these guys are just hating on Teofimo. I don't think it's a big enough fight. I don't think Teofimo is a big enough name for a pay-per-view. If you think I'm full of it, and that's okay, you may think so, explain to me why Bob Arum didn't think this fight was worthy of pay-per-view, or why he lost the purse bid. He didn't even bid past $2.5 million. Eddie Hearn put $3 million, and it had to be Triller to come out with $6 million to win this purse bid. Why did Teofimo Lopez's own promoter think this wasn't worthy of it? Why did he allow himself to be outbid by Eddie Hearn, who went just $500,000 over Top Rank? And then here comes Triller, who said, oh, we're willing to give them $6 million for this fight. His own promoter didn't think this fight was worthy of it.
Look, yeah. Julio Cesar Chavez, who we spoke about earlier, had a ton of fights on the HBOs and the Showtimes before he was fighting on pay-per-view. And he was already an established champion. You just can't graduate from one day to the next. Like Gervonta Davis is going to fight a pay-per-view next week. I mean, I'd be surprised if the numbers are good. And it's nothing against Gervonta. I think Gervonta and Teofimo Lopez are top 10 pound-for-pound fighters. I think they're two amazing talents, two of the most amazing talents in boxing today, period. But are they at that level yet? And I would even put Gervonta above Teofimo right now.
For sure.
Because
Gervonta can sell out an arena. Yeah. Gervonta does well with his.
And he beat Pedraza, and he beat Santa Cruz, and he's beaten a bunch of fighters, and he's fought on the Mayweather undercard. So he's a more recognizable name.
Absolutely.
Right now than Teofimo Lopez.
Yeah. He's also got charisma. He's a good interview. I mean, he's good, and I think people like him. I like him. I think he's great too. I have him there in the top 10 too. My personal top 10. You know?
Tell me Lopez is gonna fight Ryan Garcia, and I'll tell you fine. That's to me because of Ryan's social media presence.
Right.
We're gonna make a movie about the kid. That's a pay-per-view fight.
Yeah.
But George Kambosos Jr. I like Victor said, man, I met him this week. Like personally, really like the guy. He's gonna be hard for me to cheer against whenever he fights. But pay-per-view gets thrown like very easily these days. It's not like when I was growing up that pay-per-view fights were the big events and HBO had the rest. But guys, one fight that is worthy of a pay-per-view before we go is a fight that Jesse's going to be calling, Tyson Fury against Deontay Wilder 3. I've let my feelings known about this fight. I don't think it's going to be very competitive. Of course, Deontay Wilder has the puncher's chance. He just needs one punch, as we know. But he comes out, and I know he's the way he is, right? He likes to talk. Then sometimes he shuts down. He could act a bit immature because we have seen that, especially after the second fight with Fury. But somebody said after the second Fury fight, he blamed the suit. He blamed Mark Breland. He blamed getting drugged. He blamed loaded gloves. He blamed Jessi. He blamed Victor. He blamed everybody.
He sure did.
How do you get to this point and now you're in front of Tyson Fury and you're just quiet and you don't say a word?
I think Tyson Fury has his number, and it, he almost had his number in the first fight too. So
I thought Fury won that fight, the first one.
Yeah, you don't need a third fight between these two guys, and I think to your point, Armando, that it's not the second fight is not going to be. This third fight is not going to be that exciting. I mean, I think Tyson Fury knows what he's got to do, and he's going to go at it early. And Wilder was in trouble with King Kong. Remember that fight? I mean,
yeah,
trouble. He was having. I mean, this guy was all over him, and Luis Ortiz is much older than he is, and everything. I mean. He's never impressed me. You can't win a fight with one punch. You can, but you can't get away with it all the time. Somebody's going to come up to you and go like, oh, is that it? Is that all you got? Well, okay. So I'll make a good game plan and you won't hit me with that one hand. He depends on it too much, I think.
And Victor, we're going to be talking about this fight once it happens, but something that Jessi brought up, about that one big shot. There's been fighters throughout history that have that one punch power. Randall Bailey, Ernie Shavers, guys like that. Julian Jackson, one punch knocks you the hell out. Tyson. But a lot of most of these guys, a lot of these guys like David Tua, they understood that they had the big punch power, right? So they came out aggressively from the get-go. To me, Victor, the only path to victory for Deontay Wilder in this fight is to bum rush Fury round one and go for broke, because again, it worked for him, right, against Luis Ortiz, especially in that second fight. But in that second fight, he was down every round. He was barely throwing any punches, and all of a sudden, one right hand, fight's over. But it's not going to be that easy against Tyson Fury. We've seen Tyson Fury get up from Deontay Wilder's best punch and hurt him in the 12th round of the first fight. So to me, why not try that tactic? Just bum rush, throw your shots. If you catch Fury and knock him out in the first round, great. It's a great victory. If not, then you're basically screwed. But hey, at least you tried.
Because it's not going to work.
Yeah,
he is going to be screwed. And I understand what you're saying. Hey, it's your only shot. It's just not going to work. And before we move on, we've been doing this podcast for quite some time, and I'm the fool who thought Wilder would win both fights, even after the first one. And I was wrong. Armando had been telling me for years, hey, Wilder's not the guy. And I was like, no, he is the guy. I think he's better than Anthony Joshua. I think he's better than Tyson Fury. I'm the one that ended up looking wrong. No surprise here. But I got to spend some time with Tyson Fury at his training camp. I was there for an entire day. They're prepared for it, Armando. That's why I'm telling you it's not going to work. Sugar has been training with him. I saw for the first time in all my training camps that I've been to, I saw a man spar on just body shots. 8 rounds, 3 minutes, no headgear, no one went to the head, all body shots. I had never seen that in my life. They are prepared for Deontay Wilder to come forward and lean on Tyson Fury, and he's expecting to stop him with body shots. They understand it's a right hand, and that's all they need to worry about. But they do anticipate Deontay Wilder to lean forward and come forward and throw that body on him, and they're prepared for it. And from what I saw in training camp, he looked so quick. Tyson Fury looked so quick, not just on his feet. His head movement for that heavyweight division is above the rest. Better than Joshua's, not even mention Andy Ruiz, better than Usyk, better than Wilder. He is, I am convinced. And I went against Fury for years. I just wouldn't believe in it. I thought what he did to Klitschko was a fluke, and then he went and had his demons. I get all that. I was not a believer. What he did to Wilder the last time around, and what I've seen in training camp right before he moved to Las Vegas, I'm convinced this is the best heavyweight there is in the division at the moment. And I would not be shocked if he beats Joshua, because I think this will be just another walk in the park. And I think he'll knock him out a lot sooner than he did in the second fight.
Yeah, and I only laugh because you said that you thought Wilder was the truth. I thought Joshua was the truth. Andy
That's right.
Took him
you
out.
did.
But you're right. And Jessi, I've seen a lot of great heavyweight champions. You've seen a lot of great heavyweight champions. And Tyson Fury is, I mean, he's a special one. Because Victor said, talk about who in your recollection is that tall and that heavy, yet fights with such grace. I mean, the guys like I don't know, in the cartoons, and I'm not saying he's an elephant because he's not that fat anymore. He lost all the weight. Remember in the cartoons when they'd put like an elephant dancing ballet? That's Tyson Fury. He's the
wow. What a great analogy.
He's the big dude who's graceful. He goes in there and he's light on his feet, has fast hands. He doesn't look the part, but he is the best heavyweight in the world, and an entertaining one at that.
Oh no, yeah, no question about that. I mean, he has something special in his height because he's so large, he's so tall, which is very rare for the past. Although I think in the future we're going to start seeing a much larger generation of heavyweights because people are just getting bigger. And but he is a classic boxer. He's a classic boxer. He likes to make, to be a boxer, yet he packs an amazing punch because of that huge size he has. I mean, anybody that big is gonna, he hits any one of us, and we're gonna go down on the first one. Even a glancing blow. You know what I mean? But I think he has the ability to box, which definitely Wilder does not. I mean, he's not a good boxer at all. And then he's got a lot of training that has created a big amount of stamina. I mean, he is, he finishes those fights like he looks like he can go 15 rounds, not 12, So I think, yeah, he's just something totally different. And that's the type of, giant guys we're going to see now in that heavyweight or super heavyweight, whatever they wind up calling it in the future. Because like Mike Tyson Mike Tyson wouldn't have stood a chance against Tyson Fury. I mean, that's what I think. I mean, Mike Tyson fought big men. Yeah, he did, but never anybody like Tyson Fury. I think Tyson Fury would have taken him out.
Yeah, today's heavyweights are like, cut from a different cloth. I mean, they're huge. And that era of the smaller heavyweight like Tyson or Holyfield, it looks to be something in the past. And really quick before we go, because we were giving grades, Victor and I, and David, well, we got to congratulate David, our boxing during dinner partner. He's a dad. That's why he's not with us today. His wife, Jessi, just had a baby, Noah Lewis Berry. So we want to congratulate David and Jessi on the birth of Noah. And beautiful baby boy, healthy. And right now he's probably tired as hell, hungry, sleepless nights, crying baby, but we've all been there.
Yeah.
Jessi's are all adults, except for two that are almost adults already.
Yeah, they're in high school, so pretty much. I mean,
they think they're adults. So since they're in high school,
they think they're adults. Oh yeah, that they do think. I mean, this is the hard part here. These the next few years,
But Victor, David, and I were grading the lightweights because we had back-to-back weeks that these lightweights or guys around that division have been fighting. So Devin Haney fought a couple of weeks ago. I gave him a C+. I think Victor was much nicer, gave him a B-, I believe.
I did.
David gave him a C. Teofimo Lopez, I'll give him an F because he's not even fighting this weekend. But we'll see.
For failed COVID test.
We'll see in August. But Jessi, Shakur Stevenson, who I think I'm really high on Shakur. I'm a fan of the boxers. I'm a fan of defensive guys. Pernell Whitaker is my favorite fighter of all time. If you don't get hit in the ring, I think that takes a lot of merit. A lot of people thought his fight this past Saturday was boring. They thought he was too cautious. They thought he didn't press the trigger enough. In part, they're right, but in part, they're wrong because I think he did what he needed to do to win this fight convincingly, won every single round. So, Jessi, based on that performance, what grade do you give Shakur Stevenson from this past weekend?
No, I think he definitely got like a B for me. I can't stand it when people, they don't see a knockout or they don't see somebody being aggressive enough. But at the end of the day, the thing is to win, and boxing, like Floyd Mayweather always says, the idea here is for me to hit you and you not to hit me, which is true. I mean, that is what boxing is all about. And you have to admire people who can, do that. Like you mentioned Pernell Whitaker. My God, that guy was something else. But he had some sting, a little bit of sting with his hands too. So he could knock out people too. But sometimes you just don't. You don't, you get a feel. If you're a good boxer, you get a feel. You go, you know what? I'm not going to go the distance with this. I'm not going to be able to knock this guy out. I'm going to go the distance and I'm going to win this fight clearly. It's like, what is it that Toretto says in all those car movies, Fast and Furious? He says a win by an inch or by a mile is still a win. It's still a win. And that's it. The boxing, that's the way it is. You don't have to kill your opponent. It's not the Colosseum in Italy. It's boxing. It's supposed to be organized.
So Victor, what grade do you give Shakur?
Look, when you sweep every single round, it's hard to not give you an A. And I understand if you want to get critical, but to Jesse's point, sometimes the opponent doesn't lend himself. If you're just gonna run it and not engage and protect yourself at all times and not open yourself up, that's not Shakur's fault. But when you do sweep every round, how is it, anything less than a B plus, A minus? Like, how could you? Because if you want to, be a hard grader, then yes, an A plus would have been securing the knockout. Like, I give a Xander Sayas on that undercard an A plus. But Shakur, how could you not give him anything less than A minus, B plus? It's not his fault. If you do what you're supposed to do, and I was hard on Devin Haney, and because Devin Haney opened himself up in the later rounds and got himself into some trouble. Shakur didn't do that. Devin Haney was en route to securing that A grade because he was in control and then let things go. Shakur didn't do that. So why are we going to hold that against Shakur how we did against Devin? Anything, A minus, B plus, and not just the A plus because he didn't secure that knockout or I don't know. I don't know how much better you want him to look when he just dominates the entire fight. Styles make fights, and if the guy's not, dancing with you, then it's going to be hard to look good and get in rhythm. And I don't think that was Shakur's fault at all.
I blame it on the elephant dancing ballet. No, but Shakur, I give him an A minus, and it's because of everything that Victor said right now. I gotta be a little bit critical because sure, you want to see him open up a little bit more, but at the same time, he didn't have to. So I gotta give him a grade that has an A in front of it. The minus is, and it may not even be his fault, to Victor's point too, but it wasn't like this, oh wow, like he's the most dominant fighter ever. But to me, he did what he had to do. He was holding I think at one point his opponent was landing like 7% of his shots. That's ridiculous. Yeah. And especially when you're fighting at a world-class level. And yeah, maybe that guy's like second or third tier, the guy he was fighting, but he was still fighting for a world title. So I would love to see Shakur Stevenson fight some of the better competition. There's talk now that he's going to fight Jamel Herring. I think that's an excellent fight for him, a great step-up fight, a fight he could win, but he's fighting a guy that's all heart, who just knocked out Carl Frampton. And then after that, Oscar Valdez just re-up with Top Rank. So that's a fight that we're going to see down the road. So if we see Shakur
Oscar's a problem.
Yeah, if we see Shakur against Herring later this year, early next year, him against Oscar, that's good for me. And then Shakur, if he beats both, he's ready for 135 and all these other guys. So I don't know what you guys think, but I think Shakur has to be talked when you're talking about those 135 pounders. I think he's up there too.
No, definitely. He's very good, and he is. He'll evolve like everybody else. He'll get better. And the thing is that there's so much pressure now. Like I was mentioning, like the people want to see this type of boxing where everything is a knockout. And listen, I don't blame some of the fans for being that way either, because you see some of these decisions, lately. It's crazy. And so, the people think, oh, no, don't let the judges decide, get in there and knock the guy out. And if they don't do it, then they get mad. But you've seen, to me, I love Errol Spence Jr. I think he's a fantastic boxer, but he knows when he's not going to. Look, he couldn't do it with Mikey Garcia. And Mikey, he got schooled in that fight. He was completely underwhelming in that fight, but yet he didn't get knocked out. And I never saw Spence say, oh, okay, well, I'm going to really open up here and put myself at risk. He fought a smart fight. All good boxers fight smart fights when they have to. Sometimes you can't get the knockout. Then, and like you said, he was dominant in the fight, and that's really all that matters.
Jesse, you brought up a great point with the Mikey Garcia. It's something that I was thinking about on Saturday watching it is, how do you not give Canelo an A for his performance against Chavez Jr., who we started this podcast speaking of? Mm-hmm. It was an A performance, but yet Chavez Jr. wouldn't lend himself to the knockout. So do you hold that against Canelo? Or is it just, hey, Styles makes fight? And at some point you realize this guy's not going to open up enough for me to land a shot. And he's just going to, you know, rope-a-dope on those ropes and hold that guard up high. And the knockout's just not going to come. For as much as you try, it's just not going to be there. And do you not give Errol Spence Jr. an A for dominating Mikey Garcia? Do you not give Canelo an A for dominating Julio Cesar Chavez Jr.? You can't hold that against them.
Yeah, I totally agree on that.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't disagree with any of that because it's the truth. You know, it's hit and not be hit. That's what Shakur did. That's what Canelo did against Chavez Jr., who didn't. It looked like he didn't want to hit. But that's the name of the game. If you dominate, that makes you a top fighter in the sport. And I think Shakur Stevenson is well on his way to being one of the top pound for pound fighters. But we got to get going. Jessi, you're one of the top pound for pound broadcasters of all time.
Thanks,
you know, I'm always happy to call you a friend, and glad we worked together all those years and we could share, you know, these shows together to talk some boxing, because you drop a lot of knowledge, and I love listening to you speak about the fight game.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. It's great to see both of you. And I mean, we run into each other on the road and stuff like that sometimes with the boxing fights. But I do miss you guys. I miss Miami too, you know. But anyway, hello from LA. Goodbye from LA.
Cool.